The Reykjavik City Library was quiet enough that Erendis could hear the flutter of her own nervous breath between the stacks. Thursday night shifts were always like this. 3 patrons nodding over laptops, 1 tourist asking where to find translated ghost stories, and a draft that smelled faintly of sulfur drifting in from the vents. The other librarians said the geothermal heating pipes were to blame, but Erendis knew better. She pushed her trolley past the folklore section and rested a trembling hand on the innocuous-looking door at the back of the hall. A brass plate read, "Special Collections, Staff Only." The letters glowed faintly, though the bulbs above were dim. Andis slipped her key into the lock, paused, then eased the door open. Warm mist rolled out like breath from a dragon. Inside lay a chamber no bigger than a broom closet, tiled in blue ceramic and filled with the smell of hot spring water. A circular pool, no wider than a kitchen table, gurgled at the center, its surface glowing orange from some hidden light inside the depths. Every geothermal pool in Reykjavik was connected to the same aquifers that heated homes, powered turbines, and, those who knew, opened onto places far older than Iceland itself. Arndis tiptoed to the rim and knelt. She should have felt elated. Few humans had ever been allowed to keep watch over a threshold to the fire giant libraries. Instead, a knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. Because, earlier that afternoon, she had discovered an empty glass case where the most dangerous artifact of the Special Collections hater Sagan, the Peril Saga had, sat undisturbed for 6 centuries. The book was no ordinary saga. Its calfskin pages were inscribed with volcanic runes that described the birth of every eruption from Hekla to Katla. More terrifyingly, those runes could be rearranged to change what had happened. Move one stanza, and an eruption that had buried a town in 1783 might instead spare it, or swallow 2 others. Reorder an entire chapter, and entire branches of human history would melt and reform like molten rock. Eruptions were memory, and memory could be edited. If the thief took the saga into the wrong hands, if a fire giant scholar decided to improve, Earth's timeline lava would rise in new veins, lands would vanish into ash, and no one would even remember they'd been different. Arndis forced herself to breathe. She had never confronted a criminal or shouted at a patron for overdue books. She was, as her grandmother used to say, as timid as the drizzle that tried and failed to soak Reykjavik's woolen coats. But she was also the custodian of this portal, sworn quietly, of course. To keep watch, and stolen items must be reclaimed. She rolled up her sleeves, whispered the 9-note chant her mentor had taught her, and plunged her hands into the steaming pool. Fire kissed water, and reality folded like vellum. A flare of scarlet dazzled her eyes, and then she was falling. When the tumbling stopped, Arndis landed on her knees upon black glass tiles warm enough to sting. She had arrived in the vestibule of kindled thought. The grand foray of the fire giant's archives. Pillars of obsidian soared high above, veined by rivers of magma that flowed inside crystal conduits like flaming arteries. Shelves the size of cathedrals rose in concentric rings, each bristling with rune-etched tablets and colossal scrolls wrapped around beams as thick as oak trunks. Giants, a dozen meters tall, their skin the cobalt grey of cooled lava, trudged across bridges, murmuring resonant greetings to one another, sparks leaping from their beards. Clenched her satchel to keep from bolting back through the portal behind her, which shimmered like a whirlpool suspended in mid-air. She dared not retreat. The thief could fade into the labyrinth at any moment. She squared her shoulders and proceeded to the reference desk, a basalt slab big enough to park a bus upon. Behind it towered Logi, assistant archivist of the 3rd Furnace Wing. Logi's eyes burned amber, and his breath smoked in the cool cavern air. Yet Arndis had always found him gentle. He called her Little Page Mama when she came to deliver interlively memos. She hoped that goodwill still held. Logi peered down, his pupils narrowing to coals. "And these Hersteins to got here? You cross early this season? Solstice is 10 nights away. A grave matter brings me, she said, voice quavering. Herita Sagan has been stolen. I fear the thief rushed here. Logi's brows arched like furnace doors. Stolen? By your kin? I saw human boot prints by the display, but, she swallowed, a collaborator might await on this side. The giant hummed, a sound like boulders grinding. We monitor ingress. Let me summon the Ember Index. He lifted a mallet and struck a copper bell. A flurry of salamander-shaped sparks skittered across the desk, chirping. They darted toward every corridor, scattering orange light. Follow them, Logi advised. If a new volume passed the threshold, the sparks will scent its binding glue. Arndis bowed. Thank you. Her leather shoes slapped across the hot tiles as she pursued the living embers. They zigzagged through the stacks of cataclysmic poetry, past a lecture hall where giants debated whether Krakatoa's 1883 detonation was justified editing or reckless flourish. Every echo fed Arnditi's dread. She pictured Iceland splintering into floating crusts, while everyone smiled, convinced they had always lived on small islands. At last, the sparks bunched beside a bronze door marked Restricted Pyroclassic Narratology. The lock dangled, melted. A trail of soot footprints led inside, each the size of a man's hiking boot. Arnditi steeled herself and slipped through the warped threshold. Beyond was a rotunda lit by lava chandeliers. In the center rose a pedestal of pumice, supporting a single book, though now the stand was bare. Shelves stretched outward, but dozens of scroll cubbies gaped empty, tongues of smoke curling. Someone had ransacked the room. She crouched beside the footprints, still warm. That meant the thief lingered. A cough, a human cough echoed from behind a toppled cabinet. Arndis crept forward, keeping low. There, hunched against a crate of obsidian inkstones, a man examined a leather-bound book whose runes pulsed crimson. A hater Sagan. He was perhaps 40, with wind-burned cheeks and salt and pepper stubble. A battered researcher's backpack lay open beside him, filled with volcanic soil samples and a half-eaten Kleiner pastry. His eyes, feverish with triumph, flicked across the Saga's pages. Undis's heart hammered. She recognized him. Einar Heididmar, a visiting volcanologist who had spent weeks in the library's map room. He had smiled shyly when she stamped his borrowing slips. She'd thought him kind. He hadn't seen her yet. She could run. She should fetch Logi, demand detainment protocols. But Einar might wield the Saga before help arrived. The rotunda vibrated with unstable power, as if the book itself sensed an imminent edit. Arndis drew a shaky breath. Hey, Einar, he jolted, slamming the cover shut. Arndis. His tone swerved between delight and panic. I didn't expect you. Her mouth felt desert dry. You've taken restricted property. He raised a placating hand. Listen, humanity deserves agency over its own geological fate. The giants hoard these manuscripts, decide which eruptions occur, which civilizations suffocate. We need leverage. Leverage? Her voice cracked. You could erase entire peoples by accident. Einar's gaze glittered. Or save them. Think of Pompeii spared, of the lucky famine undone. Iceland alone lost 20% of her people in 1783. He loosened the Saga's strap. We strip mine the planet, yet accept natural disasters as fixed. Why not update the draft? Einar shook her head so hard her braids whipped. History is a tapestry. Tug one thread, the rest unravels. He sighed, almost fondly. You've always loved order. But courage, little librarian, is the ability to tolerate a bit of chaos. He opened the book. The runes flared, projecting fiery glyphs into the air. Instantly the floor quaked. Somewhere above, a klaxon forged from thunder boomed, an alarm that had not sounded since the last ice age. Einar winced, but kept reciting. I'm only rearranging a stanza. See? Eruption sequence, Eldfell, 1973. If it never happens, Vestmannaeyjar harbour stays intact. No one evacuated. Boats keep fishing. A modest gift. Arnos felt heat rise through her soles. If the stanza finalized, reality outside might morph, shipping records rewritten, families never displaced. And what if chain reactions followed? The giants kept models humans could barely fathom. Andries scanned the rotunda. On a side table lay a pitcher of temper water, an alchemical brew giants used to quench testing samples. She tiptoed toward it while Einar mumbled. She was 2 steps away when a new presence filled the doorway. Lodi ducked inside, eyes blazing. Behind him stormed 3 more giants in bronze aprons. Yet Einar, focused on the page, did not notice. Beren's mind flashed like lightning. Giants would seize Einar, maybe pulverize him, but if they startled him mid-incantation, the runes could fracture unpredictably. An incomplete edit might tear the timeline like wet paper. She snatched the picture and exclaimed, "Einar, stop!" He spun. Logi's booming growl followed. "Human? Desist!" Einar's fear flickered. Then he raised the Saga protectively. "Stay back, or I'll unleash Elderpell altogether!" Lava popped in the chandeliers. Angela set the pitcher on the floor. Palms raised, she stepped between giant and man. "Let me talk," she begged Logi. The giant hesitated, molten sorrow in his eyes, then nodded. "Einar," she said, forcing calm. "I grew up hearing sagas of heroes too. They taught me something. Not just bravery, but humility. Even the greatest skalds refused to edit the past, they chronicled it. So we could learn." He scoffed. "Easy to preach when your ancestors survived the flames. My great-great-great-Amma lost 4 children in Lucky's haze," Anders replied. "Grief lives in our blood. But that grief shaped who we became. Resilient, cooperative, stubbornly calm." She edged nearer. "If you change one eruption, you unmake the solidarity forged by hardship. You could blink away the very will to help each other. Iceland's lifeboat laws, volunteer brigades, songs, it all roots in shared scars." Einar's eyes watered. The Saga trembled in his grip. "I only wanted to spare someone." Einar stared to reach out. "Spare them by fighting present injustices, not rewriting ash into air." She placed her hand on the cover. The runes glowed gentler. Then, as if sensing détente, a tremor shook the library so violently that shelves clanged. A fissure snaked across the floor, exhaling cinders. Logi cursed in the giant tongue. "The alarm has triggered autocorrective eruption protocols. Volcanic narratives will randomize to counter unsanctioned edits." Einar paled. "Randomize? New eruptions," Logi said. "Anywhere on Earth, any magnitude." Andi saw fear eclipse Einar's resolve. She squeezed his hand. "We can still mend it. Close the book." He nodded, tears evaporating in the heat. As he shut the cover, the fissure ceased widening, but it remained glowing, hungry. Logi reached a colossal palm. "Give me the volume." Einar started to comply when the fissure exploded in sparks. From it erupted a towering figure clad in armor of magma plates. Ketil of the Ash Crown, a fire giant scholar infamous even among his peers. His arrival sucked all warmth from the room into blazing halo around him. "Step aside, you milk-blood mites." Ketil's voice crackled like glaciers meeting lava. "I claim the Saga for the Great Revision." He brandished a staff, tipped with a core sample pulsating white-hot. Logi barred him. "Ketil, your petition for revision was denied a century ago. By timid curators," Ketil roared. He swung the star. A jet of flame hurled Logi back into a shelf, toppling tablets. The other giants charged, but were repelled by a ring of searing runes Ketil cast with a flourish. Anders and Einar crouched behind the pedestal, clutching the Saga. The timid librarian who flinched at overdue fines now found herself sheltering humanity's timeline beneath her cardigan. Ketil's footsteps cracked tiles as he approached. Humans broke the seal. "Now I shall finish the script. I will birth a super-eruption under every empire that ever enslaved, polluted, or waged coward wars." Albiath's mind raced. The pitcher of temper water, Its alchemical properties might douse flame-born magic if deployed at the precise stanza, but Ketil would never let her pour it. She whispered to Einar, "We must lure him." Einar's lips twitched. With what? "You want agency," she murmured. "Time to act." Arandis rose. "Ketil!" Her shout cracked, though her throat felt like ash. "You recited it's no better than a drunken scold. Bet you can't even punctuate Surtur's appendix without misaccenting a kenning." Ketil spun, astonished that a human might impugn his scholarship. Rage reddened his molten irises. "Speak and you burn first." "Then come annotate my ashes," Anna retorted, voice shaking but loud. Kettle charged, runestaff raised. Anna darted sideways, grabbing the pitcher as she passed. Einar held the Saga high, distracting the giant further. As Kettle lunged for the book, Anna hurled the temper water across his chest. The liquid hissed upon contact, solidifying magma armor into brittle slag. Runes sputtered. "Now!" she screamed. Einar clapped the Saga open to the prologue of Origins, the keystone stanza that anchored all others. He recited the nullification verse every library trainee learned. "Let memory settle, let fire rest, let stone remember what stone knows best." Arndis joined him, their voices weaving. A cool wind, impossible in Muspelkind archives, spiraled up, turning Ketil's flames to harmless smoke. The fissure sealed, snapping shut like a healed wound. Books on the walls ceased rattling. Ketil staggered, armor crumbling. Before he could rally, Logi emerged, singed but furious. The giant seized Ketil, binding him with chains of obsidian ink hardened by runes of accountability. Silence fell, but for Arndir's ragged breathing. Logi bent to her level, eyes soft. "Little page, Mama, your courage humbles the archives." Arndir's cheeks flushed hotter than the tiles. "Only did my duty." Einar approached, shoulders slumped. He extended the Saga to Logi. "I broke your trust. I'm sorry." Logi accepted the volume. Reparations may yet be possible, assisting our scholars in cataloguing eruption ethics, perhaps. He glanced at Arndis, who nodded faint encouragement. Einar managed a faint, grateful smile. Alarms dimmed to silence. Alarms dimmed to silence. Arndar's wrist and nuzzled her pulse like a warm marble. She looked around at the ravaged rotunda. Tablets lay strewn, inkstones shattered. Yet, the heart of history, its capacity for both pain and growth, remained. Logi escorted Ketil away under heavy guard. Einar stayed to help Arndis gather fallen scrolls. When order was restored, Logi returned, holding a crystal vial filled with ember light. "This is a charter," he said, written in living flame. "It appoints you senior liaison between our library and yours. You have demonstrated balance, heart and mind." Anna's knees almost buckled. "Me, senior liaison." "You bridged worlds," Loki said. "We trust your stewardship." Einar grinned wryly. "See?" Courage recognized. She tucked stray hair behind her ear. "I accept. On one condition. Our cooperation must include a joint committee on disaster preparedness, humans and giants together." Logi bowed. "Agreed." Einar added, "And I'd like to join. Supervised, of course." Einar nodded. "We'll review your membership after a probation of reshelving every tablet you knocked over." "Fair," he said. They laughed, softly, for laughter carried in the vaulted halls and startled the quieter manuscripts. Logi escorted them back to the vestibule. The portal shimmered, reflecting Reykjavik night skies. Before stepping through, Arndlis glanced over her shoulder at the enormity of the archives, their magma veins glowing like arteries of an ancient beast. She had always felt small here, a speck amid magma and myth. Tonight, that smallness became strength. Only a thread could stitch two fabrics together. The plunge through the portal left her dripping pool water onto the tiled closet floor of special collections. Outside the library remained as she'd left it, computers humming, fluorescent lights buzzing. No timequake cracked the windows, no ash cloud blotted stars. She exhaled relief. Einar emerged behind her, clutching a clipboard Logi had provided, its surface still warm. "Back before closing hours," he marveled. Ande locked the portal door and slid the brass sign aside, revealing a second plate beneath. "Interarchival operations. Guess this needs to stay visible now," she said. She walked to the empty display where Herta Sagan had been. Glass shards littered the velvet. By morning, she resolved, the case would hold a replica, while the true Saga resided under joint watch somewhere flame and water met. Transparency without temptation. Outside, she and Einar parted at the library steps. Clouds peeled back to reveal aurora bands, ribboning the sky emerald and violet currents, shifting but never unmaking themselves. Honors wrapped her coat tighter against a breeze that smelt faintly of sulphur, but not threateningly so. Merely a reminder that the past slept under their feet, restless yet respected. She headed towards Sunholen, Reykjavik's old public pool. The hour was late, yet steam curled invitingly over its surface. Tomorrow, committees, reports, and new security spells would demand her nerves. Tonight, she would soak, limbs buoyed by mineral warmth, tracing constellations of her own resilience, and perhaps, if she listened carefully beneath the gurgle of the spring, she would hear distant pages turning. Giant librarians recording the story of a timid human who refused to let fear edit the world.